Will Louisville add another international prospect to their 2025 class?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the university, third year hosting this show. I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Outside of the Nate Ament recruiting news has been somewhat slow for the Louisville Cardinals, but on today's show, we will discuss two international prospects that have been linked to the program in the past couple of weeks. We will go through the different scenarios for the ACC seeding. Louisville, top 3 finish guaranteed. Which is most likely for the Cardinals to get? What are the avenues for the number 1, 2, and 3 seeds in the upcoming ACC tournament? We'll also give Pat Kelsey his flowers at the end of the show. Largest win total improvement in program history. I know we hype up PK a lot, but we're going to give him some more flowers in the third segment of the show. And usually if there's not a preview or recap to be done, I'll go to the trending news and new developments to look at in terms of deciding what to talk about, what topics we're going to discuss. But I also take a lot of consideration from what you all ask. If there's something you comment in the YouTube comments that you want me to talk about, I take that into consideration pretty heavily. So something that has been asked to me a couple times over the past week and definitely over the past couple of days is Louisville going to bring in another international commitment for the 2025 class? And two names have been brought up. That is Jonas Boulefaa and Guillermo del Pino. If you don't know those names, we will tell you a little bit more about them as this segment goes on. But each and every time I'm asked about these players, I feel like a broken record because I continually respond with, well, international recruiting is kept under wraps by design. Like, college coaches don't really like the word getting out there of who they're seriously considering. Of course, you hear names that get linked to programs like Sananda Frew was linked to Louisville a little bit before he committed. And then now, Jonas Boulefaa and Guillermo del Pino. Del Pino actually visited the Cardinals back in December. But when it comes to who the serious players are in certain recruitments, you don't really get much information. It is completely different from traditional high school recruiting in the United States because the information just isn't there. There's a huge lack of information. So understand that I don't really have much inside information. Those that do are probably pretty close to the program, or they have international contacts. It's probably more so the former than the latter. But overall, there's a lot moving behind the scenes with international recruiting. You have to look into buying out contracts. There's the whole situation with NIL. At the current moment, international players can't make NIL unless it's like sales of merchandise or work done in another country. It's really odd, and no one really knows what the truth is. The truth is that usually programs kind of navigate around what the NCAA says, but it is what it is. Let's look at the first player, Jonas Boulefaa. According to Deshaun London, 247sports.com, he had an article that linked Louisville to a 6'9" player from the French leagues. Boulefaa is 6'9", 18 years old, plays for Pôle France in the French National Masculine League, which is third tier in the French leagues. Ultimately, he had surgery back in October He's been rehabbing since then. Apparently, he's back to playing, but he's definitely going to be playing for the French national team this summer. Now, I won't spoil the article too much because it is behind a paywall. So if you feel inclined to go read it, be sure to check out 247sports.com. But in that, Boulefaa mentioned that he had been in contact with the Louisville Cardinals. And that was one of the few teams that he mentioned. Now, it is worth noting that the only visit that he's made up until this point is with Illinois. He's also undecided on if he's truly going to go the college route in the United States. It's up in the air. He could decide to stay in the professional ranks overseas or go the college route in America, but he hasn't made the decision yet. It seems like logically you would assume that it might be a decision that happens after April because the pro seasons don't end until the summer and you just never know. I would imagine playing style, playing time, the fit are things that are taken into consideration for Jonas. But watching his game, the shooting upside is off the charts. Plays with Nolan Traore, who could end up being a top 5 NBA draft pick from the French leagues. Fantastic point guard. Boulefaa plays as a stretch 4. Solid frame. The shooting upside is incredible. Can shoot off the dribble, create his own shot. Very mobile for being 6'9", 6'10" with a sub 7-foot wingspan. The things that I feel like get talked about a ton and sometimes overblown are, well, how does this player project to look on defense? Because there's this narrative that when Europeans come to play college ball in America, defense is not really a strong suit of theirs. That's not going to be the case for Sinan Defreux, but Boulefaa, I could see where those questions may lie. There's just not a ton of film on the defensive skill set there. I believe he is an adequate rebounder. Like the rebounding upside is there, despite not being the largest player, but has that 6'11", almost 7-foot wingspan. So good size. I would say ACC ready playing frame. It's just a matter of, at this moment, you just don't know. And you won't know until it gets very close to a commitment. So Boulefaa, I'm not sure if he would be a starter at Louisville. Could potentially start at the 4. I imagine he would be a player that is considered to be a key depth piece off the bench. But the skill set is really intriguing. It feels like it would fit a Pat Kelsey offense of shooting and moving well without the ball. The other player is Guillermo del Pino. Guillermo is a Spanish guard, 6'4", plays for Cordoba Club de Baloncesto, which is in the Segunda FEB League, which I believe is the 3rd division in Spanish professional basketball. 6'4", he's also 18 years old, has visited Louisville back on December 8th. Didn't commit since then, so I wonder how significant the interest is in late February. But according to, and I don't want to say his name wrong, Arman Jovic, Jovic, he was on ESPN Louisville with Jeff Lightsey, and he mentioned that Del Pino is a name that, if you're a Louisville fan looking for an international prospect to learn about, he would be one of the players that Armand would suggest you look into. The film there, 6'4", projects more so as a combo guard, looks to play his best ball off the dribble, being that sort of secondary ball handler, the off-ball guard. There's a huge shooting upside there. I like his ability to get into the lane and create his own offense off the dribble. Shifty guard that is hard to stay in front of. Looking at the statistics that he put up in the Cordoba, or for Cordoba in the Segunda FEB, he played 14 games in the league currently, averaging about 19.4 minutes a game. He's averaging 8.6 points on 37% shooting from the field and 32% on 4 attempts from 3. Those aren't really good shooting numbers. That's another thing that I kind of worry about is, yes, the talent is there, but right now the efficiency just isn't. And like Boulefaa, not a ton of defensive film. So questions as to how serviceable he would be on that end. Not to mention, both of them play in the respective third level of professional basketball in Spain and France, respectively. And at the moment, I'm not sure how that would translate to the ACC. I don't know. I hate to be that guy, but the only thing we can do at the moment is wait. And it would not surprise me if both of these players don't make their decisions until after April. So that means if Louisville has a spot that they can utilize for a prospect that they feel like they can develop over a multiple year span, or even a player that they feel like can come in and play and contribute right away, that it's going to be something that we probably won't know one way or the other until, I would guess, later in the spring. That's just my intuition, no inside knowledge there. But two intriguing prospects. It's just you don't hear a lot in terms of information on the international recruiting stage. So we'll monitor these recruitments with new developments, but at this point we're just sort of in hurry up and wait mode. So when we come back, I want to take a look at the ACC tournament seeding. The Cardinals clinched a double bye with the victory over Virginia Tech, but let's go down the line and see which is the most probable seed Louisville ends up with and how they can get to the other seeds as well, coming up on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Attention Louisville fans, the future of college sports is here and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes they love. Now, with Roy, you'll get to be a part of the change and support that you want to see Louisville fans receive in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to decide how much to contribute and choose the player you want to support. And the best part is that if your player transfers, you get your money back. It's a risk-free way to show your support. The Roy app is giving fans control. No more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support and help shape the team and the future of college sports with your contributions. Download the Roy app now from the App Store and start backing Louisville athletes the way they deserve, with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. Cardinal fans, thanks again for making us your first listen throughout the month of February. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Now, I know in this segment, there's going to be some things that I will say, like it would be tough to see Duke losing another game. Some of these things are going to seem obvious. I understand. Are they probable to happen? Potentially not. Are they possible? Well, of course, anything is possible. So I'm going to go through the ACC seeding scenarios so we have a crystal clear understanding of how Louisville can get to a 1 seed, what they have to do to maintain the 2 seed, and how they could fall to the 3. So with the win over Virginia Tech, the Louisville Cardinals not only clinched a double bye in the ACC tournament, but they also ensured that they can be no lower than a 3 seed in the upcoming conference tournament, sitting at 22-6 in overall play and 15-2 in conference play. The next team under the Duke, Clemson, Louisville line has at least 5 losses. So by default, the Cardinals cannot be jumped by any of the teams below them outside of Clemson. Currently, the Louisville Cardinals are the 2 seed. It's awesome to see this team. We're talking about top 3. And if you would have told me at the beginning of December that this team would be right there in the mix and would guarantee themselves a top 3 finish by February 25th, I would be absolutely ecstatic. And that's the reality that we're in right now. So let's look at the seeding. The 2-3 discussion is pretty straightforward here. The Cardinals are tied with the Clemson Tigers at 15-2 in ACC play. The Tigers just defeated Notre Dame to go up and tie Louisville once again. So 15-2 at this point, pretty clear. If both Louisville and Clemson win out, or they win/lose the same amount of games, the Louisville Cardinals would be the 2 seed by default because the head-to-head is the deciding tiebreaker. And the Louisville Cardinals beat the Clemson Tigers back in January at the KFC Yum Center 74-64 on January 7th. So we talk about, well, these are 2 different teams than those squads that stepped on the court in early January. Yeah, sure. But the games still happen and the result still matters. So the only way that Louisville falls to the 3 seed is if they lose more games in this next 3-game stretch than Clemson. You look at the 3-game stretch coming up for both teams, and I would say it is not a shock that both of them are going to be favored to win the final 3 games. Louisville has 3 home games: Pittsburgh, California, and Stanford. Going to be favored to beat all 3 of those teams. You flip it over to the Clemson side of things, and the schedule is probably equally as advantageous. They are at Virginia, at Boston College, and Virginia Tech at home. All 3 of those teams with a sub-500 record. So not really surprising to suggest that both teams are expected to win the next 3 games. If you're Louisville, it's just a classic case of controlling what you can control. If you win your next 3 games, there is 0 chance that you can be anything lower than the 2 seed, which is absolutely fantastic. But for those fans that are into the crazy hypotheticals, let's look into the possibility of a 3-way tie. Well, actually, before we do that, let's go to another hypothetical when we're talking about the 2-3 and head-to-head tiebreakers. If, for whatever reason, Clemson were to lose and Duke were to lose and Louisville wins out and Duke and Louisville had the same conference record, the same would apply. The Blue Devils have the head-to-head victory over the Cardinals, so they would get the 1, Louisville would get the 2, Clemson on the 3 line. So the hypothetical that Louisville and Clemson went out and Duke loses a game. Now, I won't say that it is impossible because it's not. Obviously, any team can win on any given night. But Duke should win the next 3. Florida State at home, Wake Forest at home, and then at North Carolina. And the Tar Heels are playing much better. Don't get me wrong. It's a rivalry game in Chapel Hill. Anything can happen. But this Duke team is really good. But let's play the hypothetical. Let's say Duke loses a game. Let's say they lose that last game against North Carolina. And all 3 teams have an 18-2 record in conference play. At that point, how does it get decided? Duke beat Louisville, Louisville beat Clemson, Clemson beat Duke. It's a weird little triangle there. I had to do some research, and shout out to Kelly Dickey for helping me understand it. The way that it's decided is the winning percentage against the next team below that pocket. So what I mean is you have a team tied for first. Whoever that team is in 4th or teams tied for 4th, the tiebreaker is the highest winning percentage amongst those teams. So let's say, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going to be changing, so you can't really look at that yet. Let's say it's SMU. SMU's the 4 seed. Well, Duke has beaten SMU, so has Clemson and Louisville. There you go. So you go down to whoever is tied for the 5th seed. And let's say it is Wake Forest. Louisville has a win over Wake Forest. Clemson has a win over Wake Forest. But get this, Duke would, in this situation, have 2 wins over Wake Forest. So by default, the winning percentage and having more wins, Duke would win the tiebreaker. Or if it is a tie for 4th place and it's SMU and Wake Forest, Louisville and Clemson are both 2-0 against those teams. Duke is 3-0. So you see where I'm going with. Duke would get the tiebreaker. So even if, and Wake Forest at the moment was losing to Virginia the last I checked. I'm going to actually check that score really quick so I have a little bit of an understanding. Yeah, they're down by 7 with 13 minutes, and there's no way you're going to be watching or listening to this and that game doesn't go final. But the teams that you play 2 times, you would be hoping that they're up there. Unfortunately, the 3 teams that Louisville has or will have played twice, Pittsburgh, you have Pittsburgh, you have Virginia, and you have, who's that 3rd team? Why am I drawing a blank? I don't know why that's Pittsburgh, Virginia, and who's that 3rd team? Gonna lose my mind thinking about it. Florida State, Florida State. Sorry. None of those teams are really within striking distance of a top 5 seed. So, or if they are, they need a lot to happen. It doesn't really benefit Louisville. So to get that 1 seed, you're honestly going to have to bank on Duke losing twice. Doesn't really seem probable. But again, that's just how the seeding is looking at the moment. Those are the paths to the respective seeds. So the most likely, I feel like, would be a 2 seed for the Louisville Cardinals. So again, something to monitor as we get closer and closer to the final game of the regular season. When we come back, we've got to give Pat Kelsey some more flowers. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You could be covered in under 10 minutes and in many cases with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meet, MEET, fabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. I am one of the largest Pat Kelsey hype men out there. Like I give PK a ton of credit all the time. As you should, because what he is doing is awesome. It's incredible. I mentioned how I love what he's doing on the court, but what impresses me more is the way he cares about this university and this fan base and this program. And it just feels like for a fan base that just did not have any relationship with the previous head coach, this fan base feels connected. It feels like Pat Kelsey just gets it. He understands the Louisville fan base. And it's awesome to see. It's sad because of what we've had to endure over the past 2 years. But it's awesome to see. But what matters, truthfully, is what happens on the court. Sure, Pat Kelsey is a great guy, and he is fun to listen to in interviews, and he knocked the opening press conference out of the park. But it was always about the wins and losses. Well, you can check that box off too. With the win over Virginia Tech on Tuesday evening, this Louisville Cardinals team is now number 1 in the program history books with the largest win total improvement in Cardinals history. They were tied with the 1986 and the 2005 squads with 13, and now they are at 14 with at least 4 games to go. Probably 5 if you're counting the NCAA tournament game along with the 3 regular season games and the ACC tournament game. But nonetheless, they are in the record books. And when you take into consideration how little time that Kelsey had to build this roster and having to deal with 2 projected starters missing basically the entirety of the season, it really makes things more impressive. Now, look, there are people in this fan base that continually say, why do you keep bringing up Kenny Payne? I try not to. I try to look forward. The only time I bring him up is when it's relevant, and it's 100% relevant now because for the past 2 years, what did we hear? This program was broken. This program was not broken. Was the program's reputation in the mud? Of course it was. Was the team a laughing stock on the court? You best believe it. Has this team gone through more scandals in the past half decade and some change than other programs in their entire history? And did this fan base get continually clowned and kicked while we were down over that time frame? Without a doubt. But what's also true is that Louisville just needed the right coach. And if it, for whatever reason, was broken, then fix it. And that's what the last coach did not do. There was an excuse for everything. Now, I know that he stepped into a program that still had the NCAA cloud against him, and he had to clean up some of Chris Mack's stuff. And look, I'm not saying that he had the best situation he stepped into, but he left the program worse than when he found it. He won 12 games in 2 years. This is the last I truly want to talk about this, but to understand how far we've come, you have to know where we've been. And where we were at, man, it was tough. It was rock bottom. And all we heard was excuses, and the fan base was blamed at times. It was wild. But all it took was the right coach to step in with the right mindset and the ability to lead this program. And that's what Pat Kelsey has done. Another rebuttal is that, well, the ACC is just not as good as it usually is. I don't know if you all have really been paying attention to the ACC the past couple of years, but the league has been extremely down, and it gets overshadowed because of unlikely tournament runs to the Final Four. NC State, Clemson made an Elite Eight run. North Carolina a couple years made a run to the final game. Outside of Duke and sometimes Virginia, for the most part, the ACC has not been that great over the past 3 years. You could argue that the year in which Louisville won 4 games, that ACC was maybe worse than the ACC this year. So we talk about this whole narrative that the ACC is down. That's why Louisville is winning as many games. ACC, if it is better this year, it's not by much over the past 2 years. And Louisville's not just better. They are, without a doubt, hands down, significantly different. We just talked about it. Largest win total. And look at these wins. The majority of them in ACC play, double digits. Louisville is no longer getting upset by teams in the 200s in the net. In non-conference play, they're no longer losing in exhibition games to Kentucky Wesleyan and Lenoir-Rhyne. I'm going on a rant here, but I don't care. And if you're mad that we keep bringing it up, oh well, deal with it. It is what it is. When you're talking about the largest win total improvement, you got to talk about where Louisville was. I try not to bring it up, but this program was never broken. Just needed the right coach to be able to step in to lead it out of the dark times. And shout out to PK for doing that. When we come back tomorrow, it's all about previewing the upcoming matchup against Pittsburgh. Louisville going for the third season sweep of the season. They've swept Virginia. They swept Florida State. Now they're looking to do the same against the Panthers. More on that preview when we come back. That's going to wrap up this Thursday edition. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.